Kábíyèsí. Ọba Adáyélúwà, alága tèmi, kí adé pẹ́ lórí, kí bàtà pẹ́ lẹ́sẹ̀, kí òṣèkèrè kó máa ṣiṣẹ́. Gómìnà mi, gómìnà gbogbo wa. I greet everyone seated or listening to us this afternoon. I will only try to fill in some gaps because there is no time for me to fully say my own piece about the history of Lagos. I will start with the issue which formed the conclusion or latter part of my Egbon, Alhaji Basiro's contribution. And that's the issue of who are the Lagosians. And when I say Lagosians, I mean the inhabitants of Lagos colony. A colony established by the British, the first British colony on what we call modern Nigeria. There were 3 colonies established by Britain in what we call Nigeria today. But before the British put over those moves formed the impression on paper in 1861, when it was supposed to have ceded Lagos to Queen Victoria. Although they retreated from that stance 2 years later, when the issue of the ownership of land in Lagos cropped up. In the House of Commons in 1863, I believe, or 65, in answer to a question by a member, the colonial secretary at that time said, I'll acknowledge the ownership of land in Lagos at that time to the Idejo chiefs, and that it wasn't the Oba who really owned the land. That went on. Oniru was Attorney General in 1910. Then Oluwa, Amadu Tijani Oluwa, was secretary to the Southern government in about 1815. But the indigenous people of Lagos State, as we know it today, and Lagos colony is the same as Lagos State today, more or less. The Aworis were the original indigenes of Eko, as we've been told by our lecturer. The Eguns are in Badagry area. The Benin, when they invaded Lagos, long story, the Gadu Ghana is enveloped by the Benin settlement, Idu Tafa, Idu Mota, Idu Maigo, Idu Mago. The Idus, that signifies the Benin invasion and settlement in Lagos. They were also part of the indigenous population Lagos. The Nupes, the Tapas, been told of Oshodi Tapa, who was more or less the chief of staff of Osoko when he was exiled in Epe. The returnees from Brazil, Brazilian quarters in Lagos. The Saros, the descendants of slaves who came via Freetown in Sierra Leone. The Jebus, the Korodu, Jebuepe, indigenous to Lagos. The Obas, Agodo Egba, off the Sumo Street before you get to Enowa in Lagos, Agodo Egba, that's Egba settlement. There is also Abule Egba on the mainland. The Ekiti is also settled in certain parts of what you call Lagos, especially in the mainland. The Ijeshas, these were indigenous, the descendants of these people who settled in Lagos over 200 years ago, or close to more than 100 years, are indigenous Lagosians. And don't let us forget those who settled in Obalinde after the First World War. Obalinde around St. Gregory's College. So when people talk of Lagos is no man's land, they don't know what they are talking about. Lagos is a microcosm of Nigeria. But as I said, this is not my lecture. I'm just fulfilling some gaps. The first colony, as I've said earlier, established by Britain in 1861, is what we now call Lagos State today. There was no Nigeria at that time. Very quickly, the second and third colonies established by Britain on 1st January 1900 were the Protectorate of Northern Nigeria and the Protectorate of Southern Nigeria. Just filling one or two gaps, Professor Amode. In the mid-70s, that's 1870s, Lagos became part of the West African settlements governed on behalf of Britain from Freetown. About 8 years later, up to about 1888, Lagos colony was ruled via Accra, Gold Coast. Lagos colony was direct responsibility of Great Britain or of London, independent of any other, until 1906, when Walter Egerton became governor. He was also governor of Southern Protectorate. So there was a little bit of merger, but not administratively. And the merger of 1914, as we all know, the rest is history. Now, in 1906, as I've said, there was that merger. But the administration of Lagos Colony, today's Lagos State, continued distinct until the Macpherson Constitution in 1950. Some of us remember, or some of us read in history books, of Mr. E.A. Carr, C.A.R.R., as the commissioner for the colony. Major J.C. Allen, who coached students of, what do you call it, Seventh Grammar School, is it? Yes, Seventh Grammar School. You are talking of the first school, secondary school in Nigeria. Of course, you didn't say college in Nigeria. But Major J.C. Allen used to train or coach Seventh Grammar School students in cricket in the late 40s. Was their official coach. He was the deputy commissioner for the colony. Distinct administration. In spite of Clifford's Constitution in 1923, which set up legislative council for Lagos colony and Southern Protectorate, not Northern Protectorate, Southern Protectorate, with 3 elected members from Lagos City and 1 elected member from Calabar. All the other members of that pledge group were nominated, especially from Commerce. Then there was the Richard Constitution, later Lord Chandler. Richard became governor of Nigeria after the Second World War, 1945. And his constitution in 1946, for the first time, Northern Protectorate, Lagos colony and Southern Protectorate, the 3 colonies of Britain, came under the same rule, legislative council. And Lagos City retained its 3 elected members, and Calabar 1 elected member. The emphasis I'm laying here is that Lagos colony had been won not since 1967, but since the colonization by the British in 1861. Now, Lagos colony was Nigeria about the time of amalgamation. The politics of Nigeria, the politics of Lagos. No politics in Kano, no politics in Kaduna, no politics in Enugu or Ibadan, anywhere else. All the politicians were residents in Lagos. The Lagos spoke for the whole of Nigeria